thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this. I hope it will go well. I think you guys are great speakers. So I know COVID-19 took our world, like it made it turn all 180 degrees, but I hope that some things that are discussed today will help us improve our experiences in situations like this in the future, specifically pertaining to school. The first question is, how has coronavirus affected your school system, and is it different for different grade levels?
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, my country is in lockdown, and we're not allowed to go to school. So the whole system is online, and I think it's quite similar for other countries. It's not too different for different grades, but I think the difference lies in the problems of actually teaching. Because in higher grades, students are more, they study by themselves. They're more driven to study as well. But in the younger grade, school is a lot more about socializing and meeting your friends and actually learning face to face with the teacher. So I think that problems differ a lot across grades. But obviously, right now, online classes seem to be the only solution. So that's how it's changed for us.
For us, the way that it's similarly changed, like as for you as it has for us. Everything has been online for now. The different grade levels, I haven't seen it affect other grade levels because I've only had communication with people from mine. But like similarly, I think that people in lower grade levels will also be facing the same things that people in lower grade levels for you are, where it's less about learning than it is about like socializing. And because of that, I don't think anyone's really paying attention to it. Like there's people in my grade and in high school that are like simply like ignoring the work. They're not doing it because it doesn't feel mandatory. It doesn't feel like you have to do it. So I think it's led to like a decrease in like the amount of learning that
Mm.
we can do.
Yeah, okay, I'll just go next. In my country, we haven't even started going to school yet. We're still on strict lockdown. And I go to a public school, so not all of us are kind of well off. So the Department of Education are still, planning what to do with other people who doesn't have internet or doesn't have the means to go online. So I think that's really the hard part for us. So I hope, but other governments are pitching for other people to donate laptops or internet to other households.
In some of the more rural areas, they have the same problems because there's a pretty big divide between people who are well off, who are able to go to school,
Yeah.
who have like an internet connection, but a lot of like students in more rural areas, they're not able to access the internet. And so they're trying to come up with like innovative solutions. They're trying to do like this like projection thing for a whole community where you have like a community center and the teachers have videos of themselves. And then there's the mountainous regions where the internet connection itself isn't too reliable. So there, people are trying to record videos. So I mean, yeah, it is a problem. Apparently, like a lot of like especially teenagers are getting pretty upset because now the difference between being able to afford the internet and not is quite stark. But people
Yeah.
are coming up with some pretty interesting solutions as well. So.
I'm from Italy, so my country was one of the first to come into actually coronavirus, and it did many mistakes at the beginning. So education has taken a big hit, and we are trying to cope with it. Many schools started only with a half a month of school due to this, because we weren't ready, and there were also many mistakes with the graduation process. At the beginning, many thought it was a sure graduation. Everybody would have graduated, and many started not studying and slacking off. So now many people have to keep up and try to gain what they lost during this period.
So a lot of people said online learning was something that they had participated in or their country was participating in, even though not everyone had access to. If you did do online learning, do you feel that you are able to move on to the next grade level or that you have retained that
So
information?
this is my last year of school. So my entire 12th grade has been online. And I mean, I would say it's not the same as having a teacher, because unless you're used to self-studying, it's pretty difficult, because at least the way our syllabus is structured, there's a pretty big jump between 11th and 12th, and it's just 1 year to cover, and then we have an exam at the end of it. So there's a lot of material to learn. And if you're suddenly pushed into the system where there's suddenly it's difficult to reach out to your teachers, you don't really have a lot of peer support as well. So yeah, it takes some time to get used to. But yeah, I think people have adapted now. But I will say that unless you're someone who enjoys studying or is, academically oriented, it will be pretty difficult for you to cope up with this. Because I mean, like Vaidya, he said, you could just ignore the teacher, and I mean, what are they going to do? There's not a lot of accountability. So difficult, but I think you can get used to it.
Personally, I feel like I'll have a lot of catching up to do, simply because the work we're assigned they're just assignments. And so if you need like a specific like lesson plan to go on to a specific subject, it's not fully given to you. It's more just, oh, do the work and then you're done for the week, do the work and you're done for the week, and you'll just pass. So I think I've done the work, but I feel like over summer I might have to do some catching up in order to get to the specific subject I need to get to.
Well, I agree to both of you, and for me, a person who has a hard time doing online learning, I feel very nervous starting. So I hope I can also, catch up and listen well to the teachers. Pray for me.
I mean, there are some pros, but just like a disclaimer, the pros, like, it's assuming that the people you're talking about are economically privileged. I mean, obviously, when it comes to actually being able to go to school, that's just a whole different thing. But even within that, I think that, because at least for our school, they're kind of divided in between live classes and assignments. And so this way, I think like students who typically don't like speaking up in class or are not comfortable in social situations, I think they're a lot happier with online learning, because they can pretty much, at this point, you can just take things at your own pace, at your own comfort level. You can, it's very flexible in that way, and you aren't really forced into any situation you don't want to be in. You don't have to talk to people you don't feel like. So in that way, there's more freedom, I'd say, and it's a lot more flexibility. As long as you can like put yourself onto a schedule that you feel comfortable with, you should be able to pass school, and that's not usually something that can happen. So, and that's a pro, I guess.
How have you used your personal time in quarantine? Being a high schooler in quarantine as well as a teenager in quarantine is different than anybody else has faced.
I feel like I wasted a lot of my time because many of the activities I used to do, like playing basketball and going out with my friends, got eliminated from my daily routine.
I found a lot of stuff you can actually do online to continue. Like, I write, so I found like some journals and stuff, like basically completely online. You can talk to your friends. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, like people have come up with pretty creative ways of doing stuff, all of that online as well. Like even volunteering, like you'd think that that's something you couldn't do, but then you have like these companies who've come up with whole ways of having you contact people who are really far away. Like there's this dashboard that they built where like there's basically has a problem, and then you can reach out to them just online, and you can give the resources to them. People are doing like seminars and stuff you can attend. So I mean, yeah, I think people have adapted to this quite quickly.
I think Eduardo mentioned like sports during quarantine, and I know doing sports is like something that a lot of kids do. So, have you done a sport during this time?
I used to play basketball almost every day, but I still have to perform for when it will start the tennis season. So I started running and doing body exercises, and I found it refreshing and also relaxing because I didn't go outside a lot due to the quarantine, and it helped my mental state a lot. So yeah, I learned from this experience.
My brother played football and he really enjoyed it. And I mean, obviously that's not allowed anymore. And yeah, I mean, he did his they try and keep sending like challenges and stuff to you, but there's no real substitute to actually going out there with your team and playing. So yeah, it's pretty frustrating for them.
Going back to the topic of school, we talked about how not everyone has access to internet. Do you have any ideas on solutions on how to learn and everybody can learn to help them go to the next grade level? Are there some solutions that you maybe have ideas to help everybody learn during this time?
Okay, so me and my group of friends, decided to teach biology with incoming grade 7 in our school because since we only enroll from grade 7 to grade 12 and the seventh graders are kind of shy, so we approached them and we taught them biology. So they had the confidence now to study science because our school is a science oriented high school and the subject they're dreading most is science. So I think we gave them a boost of confidence in that field of subject. So yeah, we're teaching a bunch of students science.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Did you teach them online or did you go in person in like their math?
Oh no, minors cannot go outside, so strictly online. And for the people who can't reach, who doesn't have access online, my friend, who's like a techie guy, decided to give modules. Who they decided to give modules for the people who can access. So they have a physical copy of our reviewers.
Has your school provided for every kind of student with different economic backgrounds?
My school, uh, we have like, so in my state, I think everyone was given a card. It was called like a PEBT card, and what it does is it stores money for that you can use towards groceries and buying food. So there's like a certain balance to it, like that they keep adding money into, and like if you swipe it, you can use that money for food. So in that way, um, because we used to have free lunches before, it was a way to compensate for people who couldn't afford food as regularly as other people with higher socioeconomic statuses.
I don't think we've done anything in particular, but the people who run our school, they have different schools for people of different economic backgrounds, if that makes sense. Um, I mean, so the education system in India is a bit different, I think, because I think most people, like middle class and upwards, go to private schools, so you have to pay fees. So it sort of automatically gets segregated. And then you still have matriculation schools and government schools and all of that. So yeah, so at different schools are trying different things, but I think the mode is basically the same. It's like we're going to find you some way to get online and start learning.
How is the break from going to physical school changed you personally or anything like that? Because it's a different environment.
I mean, I think the main difference is pretty much just the lack of being around people because that really does help. Like, for example, for a lot of people, when they help their friends out with some subjects that they actually teach, that strengthens their own learning. For some people, they actually have to discuss it with someone, like physically talk to someone and say that helps them learn. So I think when all of that is completely cut off, like people enjoy doing their work in a group, right? A lot of my friends right now, me also sometimes, they do like group calls just to do homework. And I mean, that's not necessary, but like just the idea of doing it together itself is, it's quite fun. And so, I mean, like if you're someone who like learns through all of those modes, I think it's a complete cut down from that. And I guess another thing is that with our new timetable online, obviously they don't really put in spaces for like we have games period and we have expressions clubs, which are basically like drama and stuff like that. And they aren't really able to substitute for that. It's just like here's some material you can read and just try your best. So there's no real time to sort of take a break, have fun with your friends. So that I think that's the main difference.
I agree with everything Nishka said, but I think like everything, like it's the same. But another thing that's changed because of physical school versus online school is the lack of tests and the lack of like I don't know, like academic integrity, I guess. we don't really have tests anymore. It's just assignments and you do them. And it's not even, you can just search assignments up, you can search up the answers, you can photo map it. So the lack of like integrity for that, like even I can say that I've searched up some stuff, but like, and I've worked with people on assignments, which you probably wouldn't be able to do in physical school. So I think the lack of like that whole situation, this whole situation, um, because it's not like physical, is education.
Yeah,
I
I know what you
suppose
mean.
I'm learning less. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but like I'm pretty worried about like actual exams because at least right now, like the idea is at some point I'm going to have to write a board exam and like pass, right, with the mark sheet. And I mean, usually we have like tests and mock exams and stuff to get used to that. Here we don't really like. What do you do? Because we don't even know how tests are going to happen. I mean, this isn't just because of like online learning. I think it's generally because of the lockdown. We don't know how they're going to do tests, like, and it's everything's just a complete surprise. Like I do like keyboard, and Trinity just announced the new way of doing practicals, which is pretty weird. It's just like taking a video, but the point is that there's no way for me to actually prepare for these very important exams I have to do at the end of the year. And because of like whether he said you could just look up answers, and honestly, who isn't going to do that at some point? I mean, there's no real way of knowing how you're doing in school and how it's going to affect the actual grades.
I have a specific question. So, Eduardo, Milan was one of the first places to go into quarantine, and we were kind of all watching, like, what are they doing? And then it all happened to us. Being one of the first cities to be impacted, do you have any specific things that happened in the early stages of the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, I go to a private school, so I didn't really feel the impact on my education because the response was immediate. But at least for a lot of people that I know, they go to public school, and well, they had a bit of a problem because the schools weren't ready, they weren't prepared, and so they had to wait, as I already said, for half a month to start school again. And well, this is the major thing, I think, that differentiate us with other countries.
I know it was pretty crazy for us, like watching. We're like, wow, they're like going into quarantine, and then it all happened to us, and we're like, oh well, now we're all together in this.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty weird because I remember I have like this like a group chat kind of people from different countries. Like there's one girl from Kenya and there's one from Ireland and it's just a whole thing. And it was so different because everything was, and one was from New Zealand. So everything was happening at just completely different rates. And then our countries were completely different. Like our population was so much higher, and some countries had like their schools were different, and then someone, oh, my family, someone close to us has got it. So it was so weird to see like how different countries just kind of kept up with it. I think in India, it started like increasing rapidly a bit later than the other countries. So I guess it was a bit scary at that time because we see it happening in other countries, and it's like, is it going to happen here? What are we going to do? Can we even do the same things work? So it's pretty scary in a way.
I think that's super important that different countries held like lifestyles differently, outside, shopping, getting basic needs, stuff like that. How your country handled it.
Even here, like your vegetable markets and things are like that. Definitely the hotspots, even after all the lockdown. I mean, and it's just like you have to eat somehow. And yeah, people are having ways. They have like delivery trucks with like, and everyone has like PPE and it's all social distancing and all that. But that's still the hotspot because someone at some point is going to infect something, and then because everyone goes to the same place, it just spreads very quickly. But yeah, I mean, if you're asking about different countries, I think one interesting thing is countries where tourism is very, it contributes to the economy a lot. I think there the impact has been high because travel has been completely shut down, but it's also not spreading a lot because people don't really move in and out other than tourism, and that's just been completely shut down. So they're able to control better, but they're going to have a very bad impact on the economy. I think that's like a group we could look at. It's pretty interesting.
Definitely, like here in America, there's a lot of stuff going on that isn't related to COVID, but also a little bit related. There was like recently, like a black man was killed by the police, and so there have been protests, like protesting not just that treatment of every Black American here, and so it's kind of like a call for change in a way. So because of that, there have been a lot of protests and a lot of like gatherings, basically just protests in general. And our country is kind of like really like racked up too, especially with the COVID cases. We have so many, and it feels. And if you go outside, it's like here in Massachusetts, you're required to wear a mask. However, in other states, you're not. So sometimes it feels like there's no COVID, and so it's just the way that countries handle things and the situation that are like affecting it. But yeah, so because there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and there's also quarantining, but it feels like there's no quarantine anymore. There's no coronavirus anymore. But like the cases and the spike in cases is definitely like representing that.
Is there something that you miss most
Just
about
other people just being around like people and just anything general because like my family went to the movies a lot and sometimes you eat out and it's very small things that become a part of your routine and now they're just like gone. I mean I know it sounds like a bit of a silly answer, but I mean you do end up missing. And I mean, I feel like just bad news is just coming one after the other. Like there is no piece of good news at all. There's so many people dying in my country. We lost like a lot of really good actors. It wasn't necessarily to COVID, but it was, we lost a lot of like really talented people. And there's a lot of news about like locusts because no one's outside. They're literally just flying out and eating everything like some sort of weird horror movie where there's insects literally eating the city and like there's floods, there's earthquakes, and like just like apparently according to astrologers it's just the worst time ever. There's so many eclipses happening one after the other, and like I don't know, just throughout the year it's just been bad news after the other. I miss having good news.
to ask, how do you think your country, your leaders could have held the situation better? How could they have improved your quarantine, your country's response to the global pandemic?
The government help.
Yes.
They didn't help at all. At all. Our government sucks. Sad to say. Yeah. We were the ones doing all the work. We were the ones donating. They're just sitting and doing nonsense. And there are a lot of happening. There are a lot of things happening here right now. Just like I'll just share you a little bit. The president recently signed an anti-terror bill, which says that um, if you say something bad about the government or the president, you are named as a criminal. So there will be a lot of there will be a
It's like some
warrantless
1984 shit.
yeah, this is kind of like martial law. So of all things happening right now, there's COVID, there's a pandemic, and then we can see the government signing a petition to do the anti-terror bill, so just the people will shut up. And why can't they use their energy to something good, like doing mass testing? We haven't even done mass testing. I mean, I'm well. As a kid, I was taught to be, open without about my voice. So I do protests like that. Then not to do protests right now because I'm a minor. You know, really makes me mad. And they're doing an anti-terror bill the for us because we are too loud. Because they cannot even hear us. You know, it's kind of sad because they're not doing anything. And there's thousands of people dying and they don't seem to care about it.
That's terrible. I mean, over here, I guess we started well enough. Like when we had relatively, like, we had around not 500, like lower than that, I mean 200, which relative to our population, which is like a billion, is kind of low. Like at that point, we did introduce lockdown. So and at that point, people were pretty hopeful because they thought, 200 out of a billion, you can contain that. It's possible. And we were getting good news that, oh, they're doing contact tracing, travel bans and all, but it just didn't work. And I think we started at least the government started like promoting themselves a bit too early, like, oh, we're doing a great job, but the cases still increased, and we're not sure why. I think there is a lot of more. There's a lot more the government could have done, like considering the situation there and considering the demographic of India, specifically considering migrants, people who move around the city, considering work, considering all of this, they could have done a lot more. And they had a lot of good examples they could have, learned from. And I think they just couldn't do enough. And like in the middle, like in my state government, like they just decided to change a bunch of names of some cities, and and everyone was so mad about it because like people are dying and you're changing names. Like, is this really what you should be focusing on right now? People were so annoyed about that. Like, just first do your job like properly. So that's one thing. And yeah, you talked about testing, and there are labs in India. There is the ICMR, which is like the big, like the head central one, and they're doing a lot of research. But again, I don't know if they have enough backing from the government. The testing centers are all too far apart. They're working independently. I mean, the government, I don't think they're able to like get things together to a scale where it would actually be helpful. It's like maybe people are working towards a vaccine, but nothing is really centrally supported, and that's why it's just not going to make a difference. So I guess if the government had a strong stance and they support some of these centers and they actually just got down and got stuff done, we could have had a much better situation. But I guess we're realizing this too late, and now it's not going to happen.
So as Nishka said, in the beginning, yeah, they were doing good, but as it went on, it was really very horrible, because besides testing and all about corona, there was people were dying out of hunger, and moreover there were a lot of migrant workers who had to walk thousands of kilometers to reach to their hometowns. So they were totally very they did not get any kind of support from the government, and they were the most of them, they were suffering a lot. There was no transportation which was made for them, as well as there was no food. Moreover, they were affected by the virus. Right now in India, there are some states have done it very effectively, like about Kerala, wherein they did it well. But when you look at other states, we don't have that many beds and facilities. Some of the governments have failed.
Yeah, this whole migrant worker situation has just been a mess because, I mean, they depend on daily wages, and daily wages are gone. Some of them, like a huge amount of them, a number of them wanted to go home, but travel bans, that you can't just move from one state to the other, so they have to stay back, but then they don't really have a place to stay and they don't really have an income. And Legacy Benefit did some work for them, and some other organizations did do work, but that's really, it's not the same. And now that stuff is being, the lockdown's being a bit lax, they want to come back and work, but again, that's so difficult. And it's not like you can give some of them permission without giving all of them. So that's just a whole mess. And I guess they needed proper information and tracking to deal with this because they just didn't know who's there, who's where. Some people moved without letting anyone know. So yeah, that's just a whole mess.
So like in America, the cases I think they're like the worst in the entire world. And there's a reason why. It feels like no one's taking anything seriously here, and I think the government has a part to play in it. There's no strict lockdowns, and I remember my aunt had to go on a flight today actually, for like an emergency, and she said that she got an email from her airline saying the plane was completely full, and that if she wanted to switch planes, she could. And I think if that doesn't show how bad it is, then nothing does. There's no travel bans, like down in different states, there's no policies to wear masks in public. So there's people walking out without masks, going to public places. There were community pools that were open in some states. And obviously, like pools, come on, like the spread of that. And I feel like the president here could have definitely handled like bans and policies better, because it feels more like our government cares more about the economy than it does its people, and the effect that the virus would have on the economy is more severe than it would have on the people. So yeah, definitely we did not handle it well.
I wanted to ask you actually, what do you think about these anti-maskers, as they're calling themselves, like going
Uh,
around and vandalizing? It's my freedom, and it's like, what?
I'm a, I mean, I feel like America is like the laughing stock of the world, I suppose, right now. I think everyone feels that way because of like anti-maskers saying that it's their body, their choice. I completely disagree with that. Definitely need masks. And they're protesting for all the wrong reasons. If you're going to protest, protest for the people who need it. Don't protest because you don't want to wear something that's going to protect other people from you, you know? So yeah, definitely disagree with that. Hate it. And I'm embarrassed.
Well, my country, I think it has reacted at the beginning in an outrageous way, and cases continue piling up. But at a certain point, I don't know when, I think the citizens understood that it was a real crisis and we had to do something. So everybody started to act appropriate, uh, appropriate to the situation, and the cases are now lowering itself. But I still fear for a second wave of coronavirus because even in the cities, people are not taking it any more seriously. And like just the other week, I went to the sea, and everybody was well, they weren't respecting any rule related to keeping the cases down. They were sharing glasses, they were sitting beside each other, and that scared me because continuing the quarantine even after the summer is well, it could be horrible for the economy, especially, and for our mental health.
So there's big news about the second wave, like Eduardo just said. Now that we've talked about all the problems, what do you think the government could have done, should do better if the second wave is to come around when it comes to school or at any other thing in your lifestyle? What can they do better?
I was thinking like mandatory lockdowns. Like I know it'll have an effect on like money and everything, but I think it's important for people to stay safe so that you can bring back the economy, you know? And like even there's so many people that need to work um to like keep their house and to keep their everything basically. So yeah, it's so strange that like a solution feels so easy, but then there's so many different aspects of it. But like lockdown would be nice, you know, mandatory stay at home, keep it safe.
So I hope we already do mass testing because we haven't even started yet. So I think more testing for us. Also, the government decided to open do commuting, and for me, it wasn't really a good idea. So we heard the news today that uh, 2,000 commuters were tested with positive COVID. So who are taking the local train, and from the beginning, we already said that yeah, you should have more lockdowns and wear masks and stuff. Yeah, but they didn't listen. The people didn't listen. Yeah, so I hope they do more strict in the rules of having safety to every people.
I really do think it's just a matter of enforcing discipline because, like, the countries where the cases haven't increased so much, it's all about people just listening to rules and getting tested and not traveling, and the cases are down. I mean, so obviously the different demographics, it's a bit difficult, but now that the government has dealt with the first wave and they know how people will react, that's not an excuse they can do, like, use again. So and if people basically they find a way for making people take this seriously and just listening to the rules, I think that's all they really need to do. But I mean, apart from this, I think they really should support research and development. They should support science because a lot of this, first of all, getting people the right information and not spreading rumors is so important. People just pick up random bits of pseudoscience and use it to support their stance and do whatever they want. So actually using that sort of like, promoting science and education is important, but also because developing tests and developing, new ways, even with online learning, figuring out innovative ways to learn online and do things online. And you have testing, you have, even developing a vaccine, all of that is research and development. So I think what people need to do is get together and do it on a large scale, not worry about funding, not worry about not having enough of a voice to speak up, and not worrying about, am I part of a too small an organization? I think if the government really identifies the scientists who and researchers who are doing good work and sort of boosts them and supports them, I think that could be really helpful. Now that we've experienced what COVID is like firsthand.
I'll ask one last question. Are you hopeful for the second wave? Are you hopeful that it will be better?
I mean, the second wave could prove to be worse, not gonna lie. Like, it could be so much worse. I mean, I know we do have experience, but I hope it doesn't work like the other way around, where we're like, oh, we've done this once, we can do it again, or oh, it's the second time we're more immune, whatever that means. So just it could just end up being a lot worse, historically speaking. Um, so honestly, I'm not too hopeful based on our reaction like the first time, and I am scared that our like the fact like the people who are left unscared, the people who weren't affected, they'll just think, oh well, I guess I'm God now because this isn't killing me, and I really hope that doesn't make them take say second wave less seriously. So I mean, I guess in an ideal situation, we'd learn from the first wave and then use those lessons in second wave, but I'm not too hopeful about that happening.
For me, I worry. Well, I'm in a privileged position, so I'm not too worried about myself, but I worry about some of my friends that aren't so privileged. And well, it will be a great hit to the economy if it comes a second wave. Because yeah, the economy, the unemployment, it's already at the point where we will need years to recover. So I wouldn't like to see how we will deal with the second wave. I think we should take precautions from and avoid it at all costs. So I'm not hopeful at all if it comes.
Honestly, like I'm not really too. I mean, all you can do is hope, really, because there's not really like much power. We hope, but yeah, I'm honestly think it might end up the same way it did before. Maybe, hopefully, I don't know, make everything more stricter, like implore like strict rules on quarantining, lockdown, masks, and policies that would help prevent the spread of it. But I'm scared, and I feel like it'll end up exactly like it did right now, which is really bad. Yeah.
I'm also a bit worried about the lack of resources. We're barely getting through the first wave, and there's a testing crisis around the world. Like, so many countries just don't have test kits, and they don't have hospital beds, and they don't have enough healthcare workers. And I feel like once this whole thing dies down, and then it comes back, and usually it comes coupled with another flu season, or it comes, with generally once like allergies and stuff start rising again. So I really don't think we're gonna have enough to go around again.
Completely agree. A lot of countries have less resources than I think my country. Like, I don't know, it depends. And there's like countries that are dealing with very bad like humanitarian crises, and like for example Yemen, it's so bad. And yeah, and like the lack of hospital beds with the big population. There's definitely countries where it's way worse, and I'm so scared for them and their people, because all we can do really here is sign petitions and donate, but it feels like it's not enough to support the people in different areas around the country dealing with different situations all around the country. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
Okay, I know we talked a lot about like some depressing stuff, but hopefully for all of you and people who will hopefully watch this after, maybe this will
spark some ideas to think of some solutions that can help people all around the world. It should start right in your community if you can think of ideas that can help your community and then broaden your horizons. Because as the second wave is creeping up on us, I think it's important to start thinking of solutions as soon as possible. But I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. This is like the first time I'm trying to do something like this, and hopefully this has inspired you in some way talking to each other. Super grateful that you guys were able to do this, and hopefully we can do more because I think it did give some insight on different countries. Hopefully you learned something about a different country today that you did not know before about the whole COVID response.